Hello, everyone. My name is Victor. I am the Occult Technician, and this is Mind War, Season 3, Episode 6.
Mind War is sponsored by Victory Work Apparel. Use promo code Mind War. Join the Mind War today. Enlist at patreon.com/mindwar. Now back to the show.
Welcome back to Mind War, folks. I appreciate you being here. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get started. We're going to jump back into the book Journeys Out of the Body by Dr. Robert Monroe, the creator of the Gateway Experience tapes. We left off on Chapter 9, titled Angels and Archetypes. So much of what Dr. Monroe talks about in Chapter 9, he doesn't actually talk about any specific angels or archetypes, which I thought was interesting. I know those are big topics. There's a lot of information out there, but basically what he talks about in Chapter 9 is about the entities that I guess I would call helping hands, right? He talks a lot about how when he was attempting to travel to different locales or get to different locations during his astral travel, his astral projection, anytime he was having difficulty getting to where he was trying to go, he often would find himself basically with what he would describe as entities maybe on the left and right of him. The hands would grab his arms and help guide him to where he needed to be. He also talks about at one point there was a entity that basically kind of felt like it was standing behind him, grabbed his shoulders, and literally pointed him in the right direction where he needed to go. So again, through my travel, through my astral travel, my astral projection, I haven't ran into any entities like this, any other spirit guides or spirit forms, right? Like I've said in past episodes, the only other real, second state entities or spirits that I've come in contact with were either people that are still alive today, real live people in Locale 1, doing astral projection in Locale 1, or in Locale 3 when I was in the darkness, in the abyss, and being visited by the spirits of my grandparents, right? Again, not really a physical form. It was just more of the feeling that they were there with me. It was very amazing, but nothing quite like Dr. Monroe has talked about. And again, a lot of what we're reading through his books are basically his dream journal. And so one of the things that we're trying to do here is differentiate between true astral projection, things that are going to be familiar to all of us when we astral travel, some of the very basics. We're trying to differentiate those from basically the dream journal that Dr. Monroe is writing as he's going into Locale 2. Again, we have the sleep dojo. That's that first place where we're going to be doing a lot of our kind of self-help work. There's no out-of-body experience yet. We're just in a calm, relaxed state. We're in that focus 10. We've allowed ourselves to be hypnotized into a deep sleep. And we're doing some of these self-help things like our energy conversion box, right? That we're doing in the sleep dojo. Then when it's time for an out-of-body experience and to do some astral travel, we're going to go into locale 1. That's the here and now, the real world, where we can visit places on the earth right now at this very time. Then locale 2, that's that dream state. That is where things may be familiar, but very strange at the same time. We can have some control in locale 2 with our environment and what we can do in that environment. And then locale 3 is that darkness, the abyss that lies outside of our universe. That is that calming place where it feels like this is where we came from, this is where we're going back to. Overwhelming feelings of love and pain-free and comfort. And from, again, locale 3, we can open up portals, open up windows, and go wherever we want. So again, a lot of what we're trying to interpret here through Dr. Monroe's books are his dream journal, his work in locale 2. Again, not everything that you run into through your travel and through your work with the Gateway Experience tapes is going to be the same as Dr. Monroe's. In fact, it could be very different because it's your imagination that is creating the environments in locale 2. Okay, so that leads us into chapter 10, titled Intelligent Animals. And now this is very interesting. After reading through this chapter, I'm pretty sure that what Dr. Monroe is talking about in this chapter is actually having experienced sleep paralysis. Again, there are multiple forms of what we're doing here, and I think the things that he talks about in this chapter are actually sleep paralysis. I've had experience with sleep paralysis myself, and I'm going to talk about those as we go through this chapter. So let's start out here. Chapter 10, Intelligent Animals, Dr. Monroe says this. Throughout man's history, the reports have been consistent. There are demons, spirits, goblins, gremlins, and assorted subhuman entities always hanging around humanity to make life miserable. Are these myths, hallucinations? For once, suppose we don't dismiss the topic before we take a good long look. Perhaps all such things do originate in the imagination. The question is, from what source does the imagination conjure up these beings? The following excerpts from the notes offer several possibilities. Okay, so some very important things here. Not only is this going to be talked about more as we go through the Gateway Experience tapes, but this is also going to play into future seasons when we get into the spiritual side of what we're doing here. But Dr. Monroe says, throughout man's history, the reports have been consistent. And this is what I found. All of the, as he calls them, demons, spirits, goblins, gremlins, and assorted subhuman entities, they are consistently told throughout history, throughout all of humanity. We hear these same stories of these entities over and over and over again, right? And it's very interesting to think, okay, how is it that people tens of thousands of years ago had the same experiences that we're having today through our sleep paralysis? And he says, are these myths? I think that's where a lot of the myths and the lore and all of these stories that we have throughout history of these entities, that's where they come from. I believe it comes from people having sleep paralysis. And this is most important. He says, perhaps all such things do originate in the imagination. Like we've talked about before, everything that we're doing in the Gateway Experience is imagination. It is our imagination that is creating these scenes and scenarios that we are experiencing, okay? And without imagination, there will be no manifestation. So let's take a look at what Dr. Monroe says here. There's a sentence here. It says, there is the possibility that the entire thing could have been hallucination or dream superimposed over my complete consciousness. Okay. This is a perfect example and explanation of sleep paralysis, or at least from my experience with it. And here are some of those experiences. So, gosh, almost 6-7 years ago now, when I was preparing to move out of Southern California and move back home here, I had been in Southern California for 20 years. I owned a home. My children and I lived there. And now we were getting prepared to sell the home and getting ready to move. Okay. So that last year that we were there was very difficult, very stressful. Throughout our time in that neighborhood, there had been multiple murders, gun violence, gang violence. We were just months away from selling our home when we were evacuated from our house because of the California wildfires. This was all happening around that same time. And you can't imagine the amount of stress that I was under, having worked to prepare my home to sell it for all of these months and months of remodeling and repairing and painting and landscaping, all kinds of work I was putting into the house. And now we had to evacuate. In the house that I was about to put up for sale, I was so worried and stressed that it was about to burn to the ground. And prior to this, around that same time, we had a man break into our home with a gun early one morning. It was around 6 a.m. He broke in through the window and literally woke me out of my bed with a gun in his hand. Thankfully, he was peaceful. He was a neighborhood man in his young 20s who had some mental issues. We were kind of aware of him, right? And I was able to peacefully escort him out of my home. Okay, we'll just put it that way, right? There was no harm, no foul, but it was very scary. So at this point, my stress levels were through the roof. And this is when I started to experience sleep paralysis. And here's the best way that I can explain how it happens, right? At this point, because of my stress levels, I was literally sleeping with one eye open. My left eye, as I slept, never quite closed. Just like you hear about in the movies and stuff like that. I mean, I was always on the lookout, right? I was just on high alert at all times on those months prior to actually moving. And my first experience with sleep paralysis, I was laying in bed. I was laying flat. My arms were at my side, much the same way that I lay when I'm listening to the Gateway Experience. And now for my bedroom, the door into my bedroom was on my left-hand side. On the right-hand side, there was a door that led into the master bathroom and then a window to the outside. And so what happened is I'm laying there and I look out the door that leads into the bedroom and down the hallway. And I could see the light on, right? I could see that someone had left the hall light on. And I remember asking one of my children, hey, could you turn the light off? And for some reason, the light in my bathroom had been left on. I said, hey, can you also turn the light off in my bathroom? And so I saw a silhouette of one of my children, or what I thought was, come into my room from the hallway. Again, it was just a silhouette. But I was really tired, kind of, I thought I was kind of falling asleep at this time. And so I didn't really think much of it. And as they, I want to say walked, but it was more as they floated across the foot of my bed, I saw them go towards the bathroom, and it was like they were turning the light off. And then they came back across, and now they were standing right next to me on the bed. And that's when I realized this is not my child. Who is this? What is this? And now this entity turned into a woman, not something that you could physically see all of the details, but again, just a silhouette of a woman. And all of a sudden, again, I'm laying there flat. Before I know it, she's just right there on top of me, holding me down, right? I feel like I couldn't move my arms. Again, this was sleep paralysis, right? And so here's what happens when you go into sleep paralysis. I found basically your body releases a chemical at night when you sleep. And it does so in order to prevent the body from acting out our dreams and potentially injuring ourselves, okay? So a natural chemical inside of our body is produced when we fall asleep, and it paralyzes us. So we're not rolling around our bed and acting out our dreams, possibly falling out of bed or scratching ourselves or whatever. And the chemical that is created is basically during REM sleep, the brain's motor neurons are inhibited by the neurotransmitters gamma aminobutyric acid, GABA, and glycine, which causes muscle paralysis, okay? So again, our physical body is making a natural chemical to paralyze us as we sleep. This is what happens when we listen to the Gateway Experience tapes. Our body creates that chemical at the same way. It puts our body into deep sleep. That's what helps with relieving the pain and all of that stuff. But again, our mind is wide awake. This is what happens in sleep paralysis. Your mind is wide awake, and because your eye is slightly opened, you're able to see the room around you. And that's what Dr. Monroe was saying here. He says, is this a hallucination or dream superimposed over my complete consciousness? Because again, he's laying there conscious. He can see the room around him. That paralyzing chemical has already been released, so he can't move. His body feels asleep, but he's still conscious and awake, the same state of being that we are during the Gateway Experience. But through sleep paralysis, your eyes just happen to be open and you can see the room around you. That's why I was seeing this entity interact with my room. And again, so now she's standing on the side right next to me. I'm laying there flat. She just jumps on top of me, laying flat in front of me, just like in the movies, okay? My hands being forced down, I couldn't move. And white light just starts shooting out of my body. It's just like in the movies, like the sound of wind just blowing through. I could kind of see her like floating above me, just right above me. And like see her hair blowing back, and kind of the whatever the wardrobe she was wearing was blowing around. And it was so scary, right? And my physical body, I'm trying to scream, right? And eventually I was able to make some type of sound where I'm basically yelling, right? And all of a sudden, just as fast as she had appeared on me, she went off, she got off of me, and literally just like a ghost, exited, just floated out, just like in the movies, floated out of my room, through my doorway, and down the hall. And this is what was crazy. As she disappeared, the bathroom light dimmed, the hallway light dimmed. At this point, I was waking up because I had, again, yelled myself awake. And now I'm laying there in the dark in my room. It felt so real. And not only was this entity just, scary and amazing and all that stuff, and that was wild, but it was really seeing my room and the hallway lit up. That's the part that made it feel so real. And that's the part that was so strange, right? And so I started to do some research about this and say, what was this? And from what I found through myth and lore, throughout the history of humanity, over and over again, man being visited by the succubus or Lilith, right? That's who this entity was. You can go and you can do your own research on the succubus and the incubus and Lilith and what she represents, right? But it was very interesting. And this came at a time, okay, folks, I was not into any of this stuff. I was still in my my computer career, very logical, still working for the military. Everything was ones and zeros, black and white. I was not researching the type of things I'm doing here with the Gateway experience. I didn't really believe in it. I had given up on religion and all that stuff at this time. I was just a very logical person, not looking for this kind of spiritual trouble whatsoever. But it was this increased state of stress that I was in that brought upon this sleep paralysis, right? And so that, I think, is what Dr. Monroe's talking about, because he's describing it perfectly. And as you go through chapter 10, he's going to talk about the entities that he ran into, and I'll let you read about them, right? He says here in this next sentence, I only highlighted a few things here. He says, it seemed pure animal and about 4 feet long, like a large dog. Okay. So, at this time, as we were preparing to move, we had a dog named Delilah. She was a black dog mixed, I think, like maybe a pit bull and a Dalmatian, right? Sweet dog, very energetic, just really a good dog, right? And I remember one night, again, this is all of this is happening basically within the year of me moving. I was laying in bed again, this time on my left side. So I was kind of looking down towards the floor. I could see my closet there. And again, I was having sleep paralysis, but I didn't realize it at first, because what I saw was Delilah sitting on the floor next to me. And I remember, and this is when I started to realize, I'm having sleep paralysis. I look over at her and I went and I tried to pet her and I tried to talk to her, but my arm wouldn't move. And that's when I realized, something's wrong. And I took a deeper look at this Delilah next to me and realized that's not my dog. It was, again, a silhouette of Delilah, and she was black and she had some white spots on her face. And where her eyes were basically just white, kind of glowing white. And that's when I realized, that is not my dog, right? And so again, kind of scared, not understanding what this was, I was able to wake myself up out of it. I looked over, I looked down, and there was no dog there. Delilah wasn't there. And I was like, okay, what was that? Completely different entity than the succubus, than Lilith, right? She was there in the form of a human, and this thing was now here in the form of a dog. Now, another night, I had the same, or not the same experience, but I had another sleep paralysis experience with that same entity. What I described after the second one as somewhat, like Dr. Monroe said, like a goblin or a gremlin. And here's what happened. So again, I'm laying on my back, arms to the side, legs straight, just like I'm listening to the Gateway experience. As I'm falling asleep, my eyes are open because of that stress level, sleeping with my eyes open. But now I can kind of see out the window, because at this point my room was completely empty. There was no blinds on the window, nothing. So I could see all the way outside. And I look over on the right side of my bed, and now there is a figure, cloaked with a black cloak, tall, standing there. Looked just like the Grim Reaper, right? And of course, now I'm freaking out. I'm like, what is this? What is going on? I look at his face, and those same white spots where the eyes are, I can see them glowing. And he grabs my feet and starts to pull me. And so again, my body is laying straight, but he was to my right side. And what it felt like is almost like what I saw was like I was in a black sleeping bag and he was pulling the sleeping bag towards him. So my body in this dream, in this superimposed dream over my conscious real world, I was seeing like a sleeping bag being pulled towards him, right? And he's trying to pull me. And of course, I'm screaming. Again, you can't physically scream at first. You're trying, but you're having the sleep paralysis. You're frozen, but eventually you kind of get, you wake yourself up. And I literally am sitting there vocally screaming, And when I do that, it frightens this entity. The cloak disappears. I realize it's the same entity that came in the form of Delilah, my dog. But this time now he's kind of a little gremlin looking thing, right? Again, just the silhouette, no details, right? I'm not able to see a bunch of details in it. And it went through the window and went to the underhanging of the roof, the easement or whatever it's called. The roof hangs over a little bit and it crawled away and I woke up. And that one was, again, very scary. What the hell is this? Why is this happening, right? And so, again, a lot like what we hear from the myths and the lore throughout the history of humanity, these same type of figures, the Lilith, the succubus, shape-shifting goblins, right? Entities that look like the Grim Reaper that come in these hooded figures, right? And so my final sleep paralysis that I experienced at this time, I think I've had it since, but never with entities or anything. I think I've realized when I've had sleep paralysis since then what was going on and woke up out of it right away. But my final experience was very difficult. And again, it was just, we were literally, I think this happened the month that we were ready to move. The house was up for sale. And what happened is in my bedroom, on the closet, there were 2 mirrored doors, right? Now, when I lived there in the house, I did not have those mirrored doors in the bedroom. The very first thing I did was tear them out, put them in the garage. I mounted them on the wall so the kids and we could exercise in front of the mirror. They would dance in front of the mirror, all that kind of stuff. I was like, there's no fucking way I'm sleeping in a room and having these big ass mirrors, right? I'm not trying to, roll over and wake up in the middle of the night and see myself staring at myself. Too creepy, right? I just was not comfortable with that. So again, right away I took those doors out. But now because we're moving, the room was empty, the doors were installed. And what I did is I opened one of the doors so it slid behind the other. So now there's only one panel of mirror. And normally I would sleep with my head against the wall, but instead I switched, right? I put my head where my feet normally would be. That way I couldn't wake up and see the mirror. If I woke up and looked towards the closet, I was just going to look into the closet. I wouldn't see the mirror. Now, at this time, by now we had put Delilah to sleep. She was an old dog and she was ready to go, and it just kind of correlated perfectly with us moving. And I had her put down, I believe, a few weeks prior to this happening. Delilah was an amazing dog. We treated her well. But, at this time in our lives, we were so busy. She was with us through so much turmoil in our life, right? I mean, she had to evacuate the house with us from the fires, all these adventures that she had been on with us. And she had spent a lot of time alone, often 10 hours a day alone, because my children and we were constantly out of the house working and doing other activities and things. And so I had some guilt about that, right? And so when I had sleep paralysis on this night, again, my head was where my feet normally are in the bed. I was laying on my right side this time, looking towards the empty closet, but I could still see the mirror that was open, the one mirror that was there. And again, a sleep paralysis situation. And out of the mirror crawled a demon dog, crawling out of it, crawling on the floor, coming towards me. Its bark and growl wasn't like from a normal dog where you would hear it directionally coming from the dog. This time, the bark and growl just engrossed me. The sound was coming from everywhere. Just like a movie, just like a scary movie, right? You can picture it that way. And as this dog is crawling on the ground towards me, this giant thing, 4 feet long, like a large dog, just like Dr. Monroe described. I mean, I was screaming. I woke up screaming, and this demon dog, this monster dog disappeared, right? Again, all a part of our imagination. But again, we imagine the same things throughout humanity. Throughout our history, these same stories are being told over and over and over again. So that's why we have to, as we go through the books, again, differentiate between the things that Dr. Monroe is experiencing. Is he actually doing astral travel? Is he actually, experiencing the things that we can experience through the gateway, experience tapes, right? Or is he talking about a dream journal? Is he talking about sleep paralysis? We kind of have to differentiate those things. And that's why we're doing this work. There's nothing clear cut here, folks. It's important. It's why we're taking notes. And as you read through Dr. Monroe's book, you're going to see that every few chapters, he says, here it's dated 7/13/1960, nighttime. 10/26/1960, nighttime, right? This is why it's so important to keep your journals. Take notes on what you're doing and what you're experiencing so we can try to classify these things as we go through. So let's read on. It says, "It could have been a dream. If so, it was most vivid and certainly did not follow the usual pattern of dreams that I have. The superimposure of the room perfectly as the background and the action plus conscious control of actions tends to negate the dream concept." Again, he's talking about these dream-like entities being superimposed over the real world that we're in, the scene that we're in. For me, it was in my bedroom. I'm laying there, sleep paralysis. My eye is open. I can see the real world, but my body is paralyzed from these chemicals, right? These sleep chemicals. I can't move. And now a superimposed locale 2 dream state is starting to fall over the real world. And it often starts, again, just like the movies. You're going to know it's happening because the shadows in the corner are going to start to grow. Just like in the movies. They grow out of the corners and the room starts to darken and dim and the shadows start to grow. It can be very scary. I was very frightened. And trust me, when I told my children and all their friends these stories, that was some scary nighttime, scary stories, right? I thought it was great. But so that's really the crux of chapter 9 and 10. Again, chapter 9. Dr. Monroe is talking about, let's see, what was chapter 9 again? Angels and archetypes. Again, he didn't talk about experiencing or having any interaction with the angels that we know of today from our religious teachings, right? Or the archetypes that we know through all the different stories and lore throughout history. But more, he talked about what I call the helping hands, kind of these hands that would help guide his spirit body in the right direction. And then in chapter 10, Intelligent Animals, Dr. Monroe talks about what I believe is his experiences with sleep paralysis. And again, that's based on my experiences with sleep paralysis. He's basically explaining the exact type of experience that I had. Running into, like he says, these consistent throughout history reports of demons, spirits, goblins, gremlins, and assorted human entities. These are all things that, what's interesting is is it something that is built into the human psyche that we passed on throughout history? Or is it because someone had these experiences early on and they wrote them down in a book and all of us have heard them? We've heard them in our ghost stories. We see them in our scary movies, these same type of entities and situations. And maybe our mind just remembers those. But ultimately, what's most important is it's our imagination. So when you are in a sleep paralysis situation, remember, it's not real. This is your imagination. You can wake up from it at any time. And as we go, and as you learn to control things in locale 2, maybe you can even start to have a little more control in a sleep paralysis type situation. So again, that's chapters 9 and 10 out of from the book Journeys Out of the Body. And in a moment, we're going to start talking about Wave 1, Tape 6, which is titled Free Flow 10, after a word from our sponsor.
Mind War is sponsored by Victory Work Apparel. Use promo code Mind War.
Welcome back, folks. Again, I appreciate any patronage that you might do from Victory Work Apparel. You can find awesome fresh hoodies like this California hoodie here. That we have all kinds of great apparel over there. Hoodies, t-shirts, hats, okay? Check them out. There's stickers there. Anything that you can do over there, I really appreciate. You can also help support Mind War by going to patreon.com/mindwar and finding our series over there. We go deeper into some of the skills that we need to just be more powerful in our lives. It's a great series over there. So before I started season 3, I set up a schedule for seasons 3, 4, and 5, right? We're going through the Gateway Experience tapes. We have 7 waves of tapes. We have 3 books to get through. So I made a schedule saying, this week we're going to be working on this tape. We're going to be reading these chapters. And I am so proud to say that we are right on schedule, folks. So if you're out there, if you're following along, you should be proud of the work that you're putting into. I appreciate everyone who's out there listening and watching. I think that's awesome. So before we move into tape 6, I wanted to take a moment to address Wave 1, Tape 5, Sleep Exploration. That's what we talked about in the last episode. So as I was uploading that video, I saw a recommended video from a channel by a young man. I didn't catch his name. I couldn't find his name, but he seems like a nice guy. And you can find it at The Gateway Experience. Okay, great title. That's his YouTube channel, at The Gateway Experience. In the video that I watched several of them, but this one I wanted to focus on. It was My Gateway Experience Sleep Exploration Wave 1, Tape 5. This video came out just about 2 months ago. So it's really awesome to see that there are other people out there working their way through the tapes, taking notes and sharing with other people. That's one of the most important things that we can do here. As you listen to the tapes, you need to be creating your journal, right? Taking notes on what you're experiencing. and then sharing them when you're ready in whatever format that might be. You can come out and do something like we're doing here. I'm putting on a podcast, right? So it's kind of formal, it's every week I'm doing new episodes. Or you could just do a vlog, just do a one-time video where you sit in front of the camera, read through your notes, and talk about your experiences. You could write your own book about your journeys, or even just write a pamphlet, just something small that people can kind of understand what you've been through, right? It's important to share. And this gentleman over at the Gateway Experience YouTube channel is doing just that. He's sharing his experiences. Now, again, this is about Wave 1, Tape 5, Sleep Exploration. We talked about it in the last episode. And I'm going to read from the transcripts here of what this gentleman said. And again, this is not in any way to negatively look at his results or anything like that. We're just comparing notes here. And so this is what I took from his video. So overall, in my experience with this tape, not much happened. I'm not going to sit here and invent content or pretend that something happened if it didn't. Nothing really happened for me in this tape. I did fall asleep by the end. Okay. This is very important. We've talked about this before. There is a huge difference between listening to the tapes and experiencing the tapes. In the last episode, I told you, Wave 1, Tape 5, Sleep Exploration, I had to do it 3 different times. It took 3 attempts before I was able to successfully experience the tape. And I mentioned about some enhancements that I had used prior to the tape. And on my 3rd attempt, right? And so I want to talk very briefly about what those enhancements are. And I think in future episodes, I may do a longer video about exactly how I go about this. But before we do, I just want to remind you, at the beginning of all of my videos, I put out a disclaimer, and it goes something like this. Do not try this at home. Nothing that you are about to hear is real. It's all fake. I'm not doing any of the things I talk about in these videos, and neither should you. With that being said, one of the enhancements that I add to the tapes that have really allowed me to experience them in just such a profound way. I've talked about this in my past attempts, in my series, My Magical Year. I talk quite a bit about it. And again, I think I'll try to do a more detailed video about this in the future. And I believe in past episodes, I mentioned that I have been doing this for about 4 years. I went back and looked at my notes, folks. I started all this January 1st, 2022. I literally just not even 2.5 years I've been doing this, right? So it's amazing to think how far that I've come in all of the experiences that I've had in just that short amount of time. But with that being said, again, the basics that we need for the Gateway experience to work properly. A good set of over-the-ear headphones. I prefer Beats. These are Solo 3s. You can find them on Amazon for about $125 when they're on sale. A good pair of eye covers. It's very important because what it's going to do is it's going to stop sleep paralysis, right? If our eyes are closed, we can't get into a sleep paralysis type situation. And I found that just the little bit of pressure that the sleep masks or the eye covers put on your eyes really helps quite a bit. Again, you want to be laying comfortably. Like I talked about in the last episode, my first, or my first attempt, the headphones went out. The second attempt, I was too cold. The third attempt, I finally had got everything just right. So those are the basics. Again, you don't want to be overly caffeinated. You don't want to go into listening to the tapes in a situation where your mind is kind of scrambled. Are you too focused on something? Are you too emotionally charged up about something? You want to try to kind of clear your mind a little bit first. Maybe doing some light exercising, a little meditation prior, some yoga, anything like that that can help, calm your mind, stop it from racing. All of these things are going to take you out of the experience. Now, again, this is not a recommendation. This is something that as adults, you have to decide whether you're going to add these type of enhancements to your gateway experience journey. But from my experience and from what I've been doing over the last, like I said, 2.5 years now, I add, low dose THC and psilocybin, aka marijuana and magic mushrooms. Okay. Prior to listening to the Gateway Experience tapes, I will ingest edible marijuana and edible magic mushrooms. Again, very low dose. This is for those of you who are new to things like this. Again, be very cautious, right? You have to be very careful about where you're at, physically, the state that you're in. I'm not trying to suggest these things or recommend them to you and have you be in a situation where you're going to get into trouble, right? I think, personally, in the state that I'm in today, marijuana is legal, not only recreational, medical, recreational, right? And then psilocybin, magic mushrooms, has been decriminalized in multiple cities in the state that I'm in, right? I don't think my specific city yet, but it's definitely at the bottom of the list for criminality, right? Again, magic mushrooms, right? So again, one of the big things here with any of these type of substances, if you are having small amounts used recreationally for yourself, that's, again, I'm not a lawyer. This isn't criminal advice, legal advice, nothing like that. But you're probably not going to get harassed, okay? Where you get into trouble with things like this is if you start having huge amounts of mushrooms and you start selling them to other people and not paying taxes on that. And the other people that you sell them to get sick, or you sell them to the wrong person or whatever, right? You're not going to get involved in any of that. That's not what we're doing here. These substances are used, again, as part of our self-help. That's what we're doing with these tapes. This is a self-help process. That's what we're doing, okay? And again, I have found that low-dose THC and low-dose psilocybin allow the Gateway Experience tapes to be felt tenfold, 100-fold. It's so amazing, the feelings that they add to it. It makes the tapes real. And I think maybe that's kind of what we're seeing here. This gentleman who created this tape, where he says he listened to the tape and not much happened, okay? Compare that to what I said in the last episode, where I described to you what happened to me in Wave 1, Tape 5, Sleep Exploration, where for the very first time in the series, the very first tape, the spirit body is actually created. You feel it being materialized. You start to feel it working its way out of the physical body, blooming out of the body. No out-of-body experience, no astral travel, no disconnection, nothing like that at this point. We're simply starting to feel the spirit body grow. It was an amazing feeling. It was very real, okay? And the fact is that without the psilocybin, without the THC, the attempts that I had made earlier in the day were resulting the same way that this gentleman was. Not much was happening or some type of failure was occurring, right? But once I got everything in check, added the enhancements, I had an amazing experience with Wave 1 Tape 5. So I just wanted to show you, this is a great example of, comparing notes with other people that are doing this. This is why it's important to take the notes. This young man is doing the right thing. He's going through the tapes. He's making his videos. They're very short, just a few minutes long. And he's talking about what he went through. And it's good. His comment section is filled with questions and comments about what he's doing. And he's getting a lot more views than I do. He's really doing something right. I think some of my past content, because it's a little racy, a little spicy, YouTube is probably not a big fan of my channel. I'm not trying to say that I'm shadow banned or anything like that, but I really hope that this series can get more exposure over time. But this is the important part. Again, we're comparing notes and we're talking about, hey, why didn't I experience it? Why did nothing happen? And how can I make things happen? And again, for me, it's the enhancements. It's the THC and the psilocybin from marijuana and magic mushrooms. Low dose. You're not trying to get so high or whatever that you can't experience the tapes. I've done that in the past. I've taken a little bit too much, and the feeling from the mushrooms literally just overwhelmed the tapes. I couldn't even really focus on them. So, again, in future episodes, I think I'm going to go into more detail about how I consume them, how I grew them, how I process them, the amounts that I take, things like that. And it's going to be different for everyone. It was a lot of experimentation. If you want some of that information right now, again, look at my playlist, My Magical Year, right? I go through it in detail. And I think I do a pretty good job of explaining it there. But again, I think I would like to dedicate a full kind of episode to exactly what I'm talking about. But that's one of the things that I do to make these tapes more powerful. And I'm telling you, you really experience the tapes with the enhancements. It's really quite amazing. So with that being said, let's get back into Wave 1 Discovery, Tape 6, Free Flow 10. Again, folks, we're at the end of Wave 1. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you for being here. Hell, I'm proud of me. We made it this far. Every week, we're doing the work. We're making the videos. We're doing the tapes. We're reading the book. This is good stuff. This is good work. We should all be proud for how far we've come. Now, Tape 6, Free Flow 10, is a very short tape. And it's very interesting. There is no out-of-body experience with this. There was almost no spirit body feeling, nothing like that. The only feeling that I had from the second state or the spirit body, the best way that I could describe it, is if you picture someone who is an athlete, they're out running on a cold morning, right? And the sun's coming down, and you see the heat coming off of them. You can see the kind of steam coming off of them because they are exercising so hard and they're radiating all this heat, and the steam from their body is coming out. That's basically as far as it felt. I'm laying there as I get deep into Focus 10, because that's as far as we go. The spirit body wasn't blooming out or anything like that. It was just kind of like steam coming off the body. I could kind of see it and feel it kind of floating around me. It felt very good, but it was, again, no second state creation, materializing of the second state body, no out-of-body experience, nothing like that. That's not what we were doing. the deepest that we really went in tape 6 is focus 10. You're still that deep sleep. You're in your body. You physically are grounded to your body. You're in your mind thinking, right? Again, with the psilocybin and everything. I just did this tape last night, right? It felt great, but it wasn't nearly the experience I had in Wave 1, Tape 5, right? Last night was still good, but it wasn't this physical feeling. It was much more mental. It was a mental exercise. And let's talk about what we're going to get here in Free Flow 10. Dr. Monroe says, this is the exercise for your own development process designed by you. You should be hearing my voice in your right ear, and the balancing tones will follow. Okay. In Free Flow 10, Tape 6, this is your own development process designed by you. It's important that when you go into this tape that you have a purpose. What is your purpose for listening to this tape? Remember the purpose. Your purpose for this exercise. And begin your preparation process now. First, your energy conversion box. Second, your resonant tuning. Third, your resonant energy balloon. And fourth, the affirmation beginning with I am more than my physical body. And fifth, move on to focus 10, the 10 state. Again, like I've mentioned in other episodes, we are at the point now where, because we've gone through the first 5 tapes, Dr. Monroe believes at this point that we understand what the preparation process is and that we have mastered each part of that process. The energy conversion box, we've already dealt with that. We know what it is. We know how it works. Your resonant tuning, you've been doing that for every tape. You know what it means. You know how it works. Your resonant energy balloon, you've created it multiple times by now. And again, if you're getting into the situation, like we talked about with this other gentleman, where things aren't happening, you're just not experiencing anything, maybe you need to revisit some of those earlier tapes. And then if you are courageous enough and you've done your research and you are in a safe environment, you can add some of those enhancements to it, right? So now we have moved into focus 10, the 10 state. Again, that is a deep hypnotic state. Our body is asleep, but our mind is wide awake. That's as far as it goes. We haven't created our second state body. We haven't materialized our spirit body. We're not exiting. We're still here. We're in the sleep dojo. Okay, that's where tape 6 is. And now, Dr. Monroe says, now in focus 10, perform the purpose you have designed and create it. Perform the purpose and achieve it now. And he says that 3 separate times throughout this tape. So every few minutes, he reminds us to perform the purpose you have designed and created. Perform the purpose and achieve it now. There is no manifestation without imagination. You have to go into this tape with a purpose. Why am I going to listen to this tape? What am I going to use my imagination for? Now, for me, this month, this plays more into the spiritual side of things, but the spirit that I was working with this month was grounding me, reminding me to get back to basics, focusing me on what's really important. And that's what we're doing here. That's why all of this has been successful. Back to basics. We've moved away from the silly celebrity gossip and some of the other news things that I was doing in earlier seasons. We're getting back to basics. We're learning about the Gateway Experience tapes. We're putting the work in. And so when I listened to Free Flow 10, that's what I was reminding myself. As I was sitting there, I was reminding myself, stay focused. Get back to basics. I was reminding myself how far we've come together here in season 3 already. I was telling myself how proud I am of the work that I've done. Darn right. There's nothing wrong with doing that. If no one else in your life is telling you that they're proud of you, tell yourself. Because you should be proud. You're here. You're in the Mind War. You're here every week with us. You're putting in the work. You're listening to the tapes. You're reading the books. You're writing your journal. You're listening to the tapes over and over again if you need to. Okay? And this is what we do this work for. Again, reminding myself of the hard work that we've done. Reminding myself to stay focused on the basics. Reminding myself how thankful I am for all that I have. When was the last time that you've done that? Being thankful for the home that I live in. Being thankful for my best friend, my Boston Terrier, Leo. I love that little guy so much. I thought so much about him last night and how important he is to me in my life. Right? I thought about how important the art is that you see around me, that you see in my Instagram, this journey, this purpose that I have. I was reminding myself how thankful I am for that. Getting back to the basics. Over and over and over again, telling myself, those negative thoughts that you have as you go through this of, man, how many more weeks of this do I have to do? How many more years of this do I have to do? This is so much work. Am I going to be able to make it? All these doubts, all of these things in my mind, I was wiping them away. There's no need for that stuff. It's not necessary. It doesn't fit into my life today because you're seeing the success. You're a part of it. You're a part of the success. My guess is that as you're working through these tapes, you are succeeding too. You're already starting to see some of those changes in your life, right? Remind yourself. This tape 6, is a great time to remind yourself how proud you are of the work that you put in. How thankful you are for the things that you have in your life. Okay? It's very important to remember those things. We don't want to spend our life constantly thinking about the things that we want to change. The things that are negative in our life that we have to attack and conquer. Or the things that are attacking us and the defenses that we have to build up against them. We don't want to constantly be in that mindset. We also have to remind ourselves to be in a thankful mindset. Now, is that the only thing that you can think about in Free Flow 10? Absolutely not. Okay. This is another great tape, again, for that manifestation. Are you working on a project, working on a business, whatever it might be? This is a great time to visualize it being completed, right? This is your purpose that you designed, that you created, and now you're going to achieve it. You can listen to this tape and visualize yourself achieving a goal. This is manifestation through imagination, right? Manifestation has multiple layers. Number one, the most important part of manifestation is doing the work. Without the work, without the physical work, nothing will manifest in your life, okay? That was a hard lesson. I had to learn that myself. When I first started all this stuff, again, 2 years ago now, January 1st, 2022, I was kind of thinking, I'll try to maybe learn this manifestation stuff and things will just start to appear in my life. Nope, that's not how it works. Everything that you see around me, almost all of it, I built it. I built this podium. I built the triangle American flag, the pyramid flag you see in front of me. I built the circular art that you see behind me here. I put in all of the work in the Mind War Studios, right? I had to do the work in order to manifest this podcast for all of you, all right? Doing the work is the most important. So again, you got to set your goals. You have to have your imagination. But one of the things that's important for manifestation is to visualize yourself doing it. And guess what, folks? In past times, listening to this tape and others like it, where Dr. Monroe allows you to explore and achieve your own goals, you're darn right. I visualized myself and imagined myself multiple times down here at this podium making this video for you. Okay. Imagination and manifestation. You cannot manifest things if you cannot imagine them. Okay. And this is a great example, a great tape to do that. You can also think about, repairing emotional or relationship issues that you might have with others in your life. You could go into this one, maybe trying to manifest others into your life if you are looking for a partner, right? Instead of just going online and, just wasting yourself and then just being like, whatever, I'm not interested. Instead, we're going to go in and we're going to, through tapes like this, we're going to visualize and imagine and open up the spirit world, right? Open up the dimension or whatever it is that's going to allow someone to come into our lives, right? It is your purpose. You've designed it, you've created it, and now you're going to achieve it. You're going to visualize yourself being successful at whatever it is you're trying to do. Maybe you have, through the tapes, through, tape, wave 1, tape 4, where you're dealing with your fear, where you've looked into your energy conversion box. Maybe some of the worries and concerns that you pulled out of that box have to deal with your health, and you want to start living healthier. And you've begun that process, but you're at the very beginning stages, and you know that it's difficult and you have a long ways to go. Here is where you're going to visualize yourself being successful. You're going to do that in tape 6, Free Flow 10. Now again, Dr. Monroe says, this is your purpose you have designed and created. Perform the purpose and achieve it now. He says that 3 separate times. Then he says, towards the end of the tape, you will return now to full physical waking consciousness by the method you have learned. By simply thinking of the number 1 in your mind. And when you do this, you will become completely wide awake, both physically and mentally, fully refreshed and filled with new vitality. Begin your return to full physical waking consciousness. Begin it now. In past tapes, Dr. Monroe walks us back into being awake by counting from 10 to 1. He started at 1, walked us into hypnosis to focus 10 by counting from 1 to 10. He hypnotized us and got us into this deep sleep. But now, in past tapes, he counts downward and says, hey, now we've hit 1, now you're wide awake. In this tape, he says, I've already taught you that. You know how to do it. I don't even need to count down anymore, because all you need to do is think about the number 1 and move your right hand, move your body. And that's exactly what he does. And it's a little different. It's a little difficult at first, because in some ways you want to just kind of stay asleep. You have to fight that at the end of the tapes. Unless it's tape wave 1, tape 5, where he just allows you to fall asleep at the end. The rest of these tapes, when he tells you to wake up, you have to wake up. And so again, with this one, he just says, think of the number 1, move your body, be wide awake. And that's what I did last night, right? I woke up out of the tape, again, still very tired, even after taking the headphones off and taking the eye covers off and getting up and moving around. I still felt what Dr. Monroe talks about through the book of that vibration feeling, where it's like you're kind of coming in and out of sleep is what it feels like. Someone's flicking the light switch on and off as fast as they can. And I've been trying to, be more conscious of this vibrational feeling that he talks about through the book. And at first I thought, okay, is it something to do with our heartbeat? Because it is a vibration, right? So, it's a wave. And for me, the vibrations are so fast, it can't be my heartbeat. They're much faster than a regular heartbeat. So it's going to be really interesting to see what it is. And my thought is, again, just like we talked about that chemical earlier that allows us to fall asleep, maybe it's whatever gland in our body that is, releasing that sleep chemical. Maybe you have another gland in your body that kind of releases a wake up chemical, and they do it at a speed to us which feels vibrational, right? Maybe something like that. All of these things we're trying to explore. We're trying to understand what these feelings are. That's why we're taking our notes. We're making our vlogs, our videos here. We're making our podcast to share all of this information with each other. We're looking out for other people, just like I did here. There are multiple folks on YouTube that are listening to the Gateway Experience tapes right now, just like we are. They're making their videos, they're sharing their experiences, and that's awesome. We want to try to do that. If you are looking to contact other people, like I said, look in the comments of some of these other videos. Follow the people that are commenting. Send messages to them. Tell them about your experiences. Go ahead and reach out to them. And, we're doing something very important. We're working through these tapes. We are explorers. We're on this journey. And I appreciate all of you being here and doing this work with me. It's not only good for me, but I know that it's good for you. And again, I appreciate you being here. And as always, remember, folks, harden your hearts and open your minds, because this is Mind War.